Welcome, folks. This is MACT back, MACTFORDEDGE, and we have another oil sample. This is a UOA, used oil analysis for 3 different edges running the Royal Purple high performance street oil. Not the Royal Purple you buy at Walmart off the shelf. This is the stuff you're going to have to order, and you might have to order it from various locations on the web or go to race shops, but in this case, Summit Racing does have it for $8.97 per quart. And you can order it that way, or you can go to Amazon, wherever you can find it, whatever the best price is. But this Royal Purple that we are going through, I ran it 200 hours and other hours that we're going to cover, but my sample turned out to be good, had a little bit of minor fuel dilution as far as that, but it cleared up from the last sample, no problem. But basically, per mile, my engine is making less iron than most of its kind. So everything is doing great, and that is always a good thing when you got a 270,000 mile Duratec on your hands. But the next oil report is from another member that provided it to me, and they ran the same oil in his Lincoln MKX 3.7, yes, the big one, and he put 7,417 miles on his, and I forget what the hours on it was exactly. I think I cover here later, but basically the oil report says his oil is looking good, his engine is doing good, and his viscosity was down to probably getting towards the end of the useful life, but his is of course running all city highway also, whereas mine was running all highway. Then we had another 250 hour report, city highway driving. And basically, this individual had a Ford Edge that was 3.5, and he ran it to 250 hours. And the oil report, basically what I got out of it, is it's in good shape, and they recommended bumping it up to 275 hours. That's pretty good testimony to this oil as far as where it's going. But starting out, if you look at the top, we have our oil testing, and we have the 250-hour test. We had the 227-hour test on the MKX, and then we had my 200-hour test. And we start out, the aluminum for the 250 was 2 parts per million, the 227 was 5, and my 200 was 5 parts per million aluminum. Chromium was 0 across the board, which is also pretty common. Iron levels in the 250-hour oil was 8 for it. 227 oil was 11 parts per million, with Lou, my edge, pulling up at 12 parts per million. Again, a lot more miles on my engine. Copper was amazing. The 250-hour engine had 16 parts per million on the engine, and the 227-hour run had 12, and my 200-hour run only had 2 parts per million. Talk about good. Anyway, lead is across the board 0 for all these oils. Tin, we had a little bit of tin in the 250-hour run, but the other 2 oils had no tin in them, and the universal average is 0, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. Molly B, that's right, we had Molly B in there, and if you notice, we all have different levels of Molly B, and that could be leaching from different oils that were used previously. So the 250-hour one had 216 for the Molly B, whereas the 227-hour engine had 115, and my engine, the 3.5, had 132. We have no nickel in our samples, and that's always good. Manganese, we had 3 parts per million of the 250-hour one, and then 1 part per million each for the other 2, the 227 and the 200-hour runs. Silver, we had 0 silver across the board. Titanium, we had 3 parts per million in the 250-hour oil, 7 parts per million in the 227-hour, and we had 8 parts per million in the 200-hour run. Potassium was 3 across the board for all 3 runs. We had boron, 31 parts per million boron in the 250, 29 parts per million in the 227, and 28 parts per million in the 200-hour run. Silicon was pretty much equal across the board, with the 250-hour run having just 11, and the other 2 having 12 parts per million of silicon. Sodium was also pretty decently close, with the 250 run having 16, the 227 having 11, and my 200-hour run at 13. Calcium, here's where we have differences also. Keep in mind, everything changes based on the oil that was previously used, but we had 250-hour run at 1843 for the calcium, with the 227 having a 1270, and then my 200-hour run had a 1534. Manganese, that's right, manganese had a 200-hour run, or 250-hour run, had 608 parts per million. The 227 had 652, and then my 200-hour run had 747 parts per million. Phosphorus, we had the 250-hour run running at 1165. The 227 was a 1021, and then my 200-hour run is 1184. Zinc, what are we doing with zinc? We're trying to keep things from wearing out. So we had, in the 250-hour run, we had 1358 for zinc, and the 227 had 1126, with the 200-hour run having 1197. Rather amazing how these numbers are working out, and there's no rhyme or reason sometimes of what's going on. Barium, of course, was 0. Now, the SUS viscosity for the 200-hour run was 55.4 for the same oil, as the 227 was a 53.9, and then the 250-hour oil was a 57. You can see that one is getting outside of the edge there a bit as far as its viscosity changing. So, yeah, 57 flat, and the 57 is the window you don't want to exceed. So I'm thinking that oil is starting to exceed everything. And we'll see another one for the CST viscosity. We'll see that my 200-hour edge run at 8.90, whereas the 227 was an 8.45, and the 250-hour was at a 9.35, just barely under the 9.7. That again would be outside of the window. So yeah, we see in 250 hours is pretty much starting to eat up that Royal Purple HPS in some aspects. Again, flash points, we're going to pay attention to those. At 200 hours, the 200 or 425 degrees Fahrenheit flash point for 200 hours. The 227 hours drop below the flash point at 380. But again, there is a trace amount of fuel, and that fuel will dilute your oil and cause all sorts of problems. So we can see some of the numbers and where they're going to why they were dropping like they were and what the problem is. And then we have 415 basically degrees for this 250-hour oil run, and that's amazing because there's no trace fuel. So that tells me there's more highway running on this bad boy than there was city, because definitely city driving causes more fuel. Again, the fuel was below limits except for the 227-hour run, and that had a trace amount of fuel. There's 0 antifreeze, which we're all happy for in this test, and then there's 0 water. Again, we're happy for that too. Insolubles across the board were a 0.2, which means the filtration systems were all good. I do not know the exact filters that were being used, but I do know that I always use a Purolator Boss, and I'm not sure what the others were using. So, you know, maybe they're using something different and they're performing just as well. TBNs, here's where we get the good stuff going. We had the TBN for 200 hours at a 2.1, and then we had 227 hours at 2.1. That is simply amazing. 2 different driving styles, 2 different runs, and then of course the 250-hour one, there's no TBN performed on it to see where it's at, but let's assume that that TBN was definitely, in my opinion, below 2. Okay, so that oil was probably nearing its end run. It might have been able to do 275, which is only 25 hours more before it got to that one. So I'm thinking that's why the lab said, hey, you're about 2, you could probably go another 25 hours. That doesn't equate to much time, really, if you look at it. Now, going into the Royal Purple UOA summary, one is competitively priced, about $8 or $9 a quart, so it ain't too terribly bad. The TBN degraded approximately 0.312 per 10 hours of use, so at a 227-hour city highway use on that 3.7 Duratec. And that, I will also tell you all, that Duratec and that MKX is a little bit more horsepower. He's put a little bit of tune into it. He's put in different intakes, throttle bodies, things like that. So it's definitely generating more horsepower, which could account for some of that fuel trace. TBN degraded approximately 0.355 per 10 hours use at 200 hours of all highway use for my 3.5 Duratec. So mine did not degrade as fast as his, and I think it shows because of the city driving. So you can see where this plays in for city and highway driving, how fast your TBN degrades. Third sample basically was deemed a 275 hour capable sample, which is pretty good. That gives you a long run for your oil changes when you get doing all that city highway driving or city driving. Royal Purple HPS is an oil that can reasonably reach 250 to 275 hours under city highway driving. So in all highway use, it'll definitely reach that. So it's a decent oil, and it can run the speed. And you know, if you're a person, let's say, that only drives say 12,000 miles a year, I hate to tell Mobile One this, but Royal Purple HPS is probably an annual oil based on that fact. But again, you won't know till you do the test. So don't take my word for it. See what your engine does and what the testing is. But basically, I'm going to say that for city highway use, you can get anywhere up to 9,000 miles, maybe 10, depending what your engine's running like, and fuel and everything else. But you'd probably just about get there, I bet. Mileage estimate, up to 15,000 miles use if it's all highway, folks. Yes, that's right. You could probably run this up to 15,000 miles, but follow your manufacturer's recommendations for your oil change intervals, because I don't want you to do anything wrong. And the best and surest way is to test your oil to get yourself up to that level where you know when to change your oil based on your driving conditions. But that's it, folks. That's our UOA oil analysis of Royal Purple HPS. I want you to like and subscribe to MACTFORDEDGE on YouTube and Facebook. And also, MacTGarage.com does have the oil testing and evaluations going on there. So just go to MacTGarage.com, click on oil analysis. You'll find that there. My feet hit the floor today. I'm having a great day, and I want you to have a great day too. Band of One has some wonderful music to play and also listen to. Mercy Girl's got a couple one-liners and maybe a little bit of something after the end of this for you to watch.
Thank you for watching MacT's videos, and remember to like and subscribe. This is a Mercy Girl production.